and welcome to the Anime Explorations podcast, a monthly anime book club podcast. My name is Alex.
I'm Tora.
I'm David.
And we are, as I said a little bit earlier, a podcast where once a month we get together and talk about a anime series we have watched together. And before we do that, we also talk about stuff that we're currently watching. So we are about at the midpoint of the current anime season. So, what are you still watching? Anything you've dropped?
Still watching G-Quux. It's interesting. I can't it's well done. I can't say that I like it yet. There's too many balls up in the air and I kind of want to see where I land. I'm intrigued and I'm having fun with the alternate universe universal century that they're playing around with. But I don't know where it's going, and that's kind of a little frustrating. I'm still watching Old Country Bumpkin to Swordmaster, which is just so delightful because it's essentially just a middle-aged man who uses actual standard swordplay in an otherwise anime where everyone is using over-the-top anime styles, and it's just simple efficiency is just beating all of them. And it's like, it turns out when you actually know what you're doing and you're not completely over the top with anime moves, it's good in a fight.
Just picturing him facing this guy with a buster sword, just shaking his head like, come on, kid. We didn't swing that thing.
I will mention the one show that I've dropped, which is I dropped The Dinner Table Detective. So what happened was, like, I was kind of with what it was doing for most of the show. It was doing the full, I usually describe it as Nero Wolfe meets, Jeeves and Wooster kind of setup. And I was kind of with it for that, where it's like, you have the caustic kind of stay-at-home person who puts together all the pieces that are collected by the detective who goes out in the field, like Archie Goodwin and Nero Wolfe. And you have the Jeeves and Wooster perspective, where the butler is the very smart, very competent one, and the rich person is okay, but also has a degree of kind of rich doofiness going on to them. Particularly with her getting thrown off by her also very rich and spectacularly hit dumb in a himbo way partner. The problem was, the twist that leads to the solution of this one case was that one of the characters was wearing lifts. And our female detective, who's relatively fashion conscious, had not heard of lifts and thought they were, and said in the dialogue that she thought they were an urban legend. Meanwhile, I'm here with my geeky, generally fashion oblivious ass, hearing this and going, wait a minute, I know what lifts are. I can dress myself, but I can't dress myself in a fashionable manner, but I know enough about clothes and fashion and that sort of thing that I know what lifts are. I know about elevator shoes. And this is real, like, this is the character being dumb so that you can have her butler snark at her, but in a way where you couldn't think of a more intelligent solution for to lead to the snark.
Yeah. Character dumb as the plot requires it.
Yeah, and
sad.
Yeah, that is disappointing for a mystery anime that is definitely more tailored for a more grown-up audience. Like, if Detective Conan did the same thing, I would kind of cut it some slack, because that's a manga that runs in a weekly Shonen Sunday. And it's aiming for, like, general family audience. It's meant to be something where kids are expected to keep up with the mystery.
Also, the protagonist in Conan mentally is a teenage boy. He may not know about lifts.
Or even if, like, Conan knew it, but Rand's dad, the private investigator, does. Didn't figure out, put things together about lifts. Again, he's also known as being he's also deliberately written as being kind of a doofus. And again, the series is aimed for kids and teenagers. So I cut that one slack because the audience it's aimed for. Dinner Table Detective is based off a mystery novel series aimed for grown-ups.
Right. The expectations are different.
Yeah.
It sounds like your version just totally threw you. Like
Yeah. Like, particularly since I've got a better mystery anime I'm watching right now. I'm still watching Your Forma. And like, okay, that, like, I have this better mystery anime I can go with right now. I'm watching, or was watching, like 12 shows. Like or 11 shows. I can afford to drop one. So I dropped one. Otherwise, what else I'm watching? Still watching My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Great show. I'm liking Kowloon Generic Romance. Windbreaker has introduced let me pull up the name of the character because I can say the name out loud. Introduced Tasuku Subakino, who is the gender fluid member of the Four Kings of Bofurit. And I admit I am coming at this from a cisgender perspective, but from where I'm looking at this, and particularly within the context of shonen manga and juvenile delinquent manga, it feels like good representation for gender fluid characters in this space.
that's always good.
Like our main character, like the main character of the show, Sakura is kind of freaked out by them, but also he's freaked out by anyone who is nice to him. So that's not that bad, all things considered.
Social awkwardness.
Yes.
Yeah. Very much so.
Also, Rock is the Lady's Modesty has continued to be awesome.
I can't wait to watch that one. It's on my profile.
Yeah. Great music performances. I dig that they've been doing for the band members performance capture by members of Bandmade for that. So it nails the technical elements of the performance. So that's awesome.
I also feel like I watch like musician stuff differently now that I'm learning how to play guitar. Especially animated musician stuff. I'm like, did they actually bother to put the hand chording positions in and stuff? Like
This feels like one where, yes, they are definitely bothering to put in the hand chording positions, not just from the we filmed reference footage of the members of this band, but also like it's coming up as plot relevant, not plot relevant, but like character commentary relevant kind of stuff.
it matters. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty awesome. Let's see here. Other than that, I've been watching the short episodes of the Lycoris Recoil little short series, slice of life short series, which has been absolutely hilarious. Which should like, have you watched the original Lycoris Recoil series?
Mhm.
Okay, that probably like that we might cover that at some point. I just need to find the right spot to pencil it in. So that's where we're at on those. Other than that, not much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
our last week was consumed with watching season 2 of Andor, which is every bit as good as everybody says.
Yeah.
I rewatched the Sailor Moon Cosmos movie with Luke. Words cannot express how delighted I am that he likes watching that with me. It's just such a beautiful synthesis of my younger self and my current self.
I did watch the as of this recording, we're recording this after the first 2 episodes of Murderbot came out. I did watch those.
Oh, I haven't yet. Don't spoil it for me.
I'm not going to spoil anything. It's I would say it's fairly early in the novel of All Systems Red. like not spoiling anything. Like the first episode is basically more or less covers the bit with covers up to the opening with the incident with the native fauna at the pit.
Yep.
So like that's like very early in the book. Get very well done. I like it.
It looks like they really nailed the Preservation Ox team in terms of casting and personalities. I'm still like ambivalent about them casting Skarsgård as Murderbot, but I like him as an actor. I'm willing to give it a shot.
I did some thinking about this. I was reading some of the criticism that came up in terms of casting a white guy as Murderbot, and I thought about this for a bit. And conclusion I came to is like Murderbot comes from Corporation Rim, and Corporation Rim represents a lot of some of the worst elements of corporate culture, even in the present commentary corporate culture in the present day. And one of the things I was thinking of with them designing, when they mentioned like at one point in the books, because listening to audiobooks, Murderbot described his appearance as generic human. And I'm like, well, if you're looking at a corporation and you ask a corporate focus group person, what would you describe generic human? They would say white male. No matter who in a corporate executive who you asked it to. Even if you asked a panel of corporate executives who are all black people of different gender or people of color of different genders, they probably would have still ended up saying, if they're corporate executives and where they're at in the power structure, they would still say white male. And so
that kind of depends on where you are in the world. Like in the U.S., we can move on.
There's been a lot of Tumblr discourse. But yeah, it makes sense in universe. I think it was just that so many of us, when we read the books, Murderbot is such an interesting character because it definitely 100% has its own personality. And at the same time, it becomes so easy as the reader to identify yourself with that character. Like I think I talked about when I first read it, like the entire time I was picturing Murderbot as woman appearing, feminine appearing, even though it only ever refers to itself as it, right?
Yeah.
And why would you make a security bot that was feminine versus one that was masculine? I don't know. Why wouldn't you? It's the future, it's sci-fi, who cares? But I think a lot of people identified with Murderbot so strongly that they then felt betrayed because no matter who you cast as Murderbot, it was going to be excluding some of the audience, right?
Yeah. I think I do agree. Like when I was thinking about my head casting of who would I cast as Murderbot, in terms of for what I'd be looking for in an actor. Part of what I think that fell back to, I think this like someone androgynous to an extent. Like, just let me check the actor age real quick. Okay. So like, put it this way: if Tilda Swinton was up to doing a bunch of big action scenes, like if I say, hey, if you have to cast a name actor who looks superbly androgynous, okay, actually I would do either Tilda Swinton or Elliot Page as like my first initial picks for like, but if you have to pick someone who has established film cred, if you know what I like.
If you need a name, yeah.
I'd have cast like because there is someone who looks androgynous, who can kind of like Elliot Page is trans. Tilda Swinton has played both male and female and androgynous in the case of the Constantine movie characters.
So good in that.
And so like that's part of it. Like first thing that popped in my mind. This is one of the cases where if you did Murderbot as anime, to shift things slightly back on topic, one of the things that anime lets you do is it lets you do a character who is unnaturally androgynous and also unnaturally kind of vague in terms of appearance and ethnicity.
Yeah.
Because like certainly also
animated Murderbot would be great.
Yeah, a part of the thing I was thinking of when I was listening to the audiobooks and stuff is for some of Murderbot's reactions, my brain they feel exaggerated in the right kind of way that my brain clicks towards some of the anime shorthand that they do for expressing anger, frustration, discomfort with the character because of how heavily heavily Murderbot it expresses itself. And
you could do a lot of those really fun like asides where you get into the character's mind, like literally a bubble pops up above their head and you could see what they're thinking. It would work really well for the subject matter.
Absolutely. And like without getting too much a tangent, giving too much away in terms of how they handle the segments of Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon that they incorporated into the episode. One of the things I do appreciate with some anime recently, like Zenshu and even some earlier series, is anime studios, we've hit a point with the evolution and progression of anime as a medium that you're getting people who got into anime because of anime, of older versions of anime, but they are fluent in anime as a art form and its history, that they're able to do and play with interesting things involving anime history. Like a ninja and an assassin live together. There's a big extended bit at the beginning of the episode of the first episode, which plays very heavily with a 1960s anime television series and that art style, including replicating some shots from that show. And there's some stuff with Zenshu where they're talking about the art style, the film A Tale of Perishing, the film within the show, that they shift the art style to something of a like late 80s, early 90s filmic animation style.
I love that.
And like
because
that,
it's so recognizable. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just in terms of like fake film grain, but also in terms of like the color selections that are used and that sort of thing. And I feel like had we like, I enjoyed what I saw of the first two episodes, but with Murderbot as an anime, they could have really done some really interesting stuff with playing around with films, with art styles, with those shows, and getting into stuff with like play like with the idea that Murderbot has access to basically like not almost the entire human history of entertainment. They do a little bit where like there's a brief chunk, it actually is one of the trailers, where like you see Murderbot scrolling through his media, and one of the films does have like a 1950s beginning of the end Roman style monster in it. But like I could see like them playing around with that and like doing an example like, and Murderbot gives an example of works of media where there's a killer sec unit, play up like the like I don't know, throw a Genocyber reference in there.
I don't know about you, but when I was reading the series, I always pictured the Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon as kind of Cowboy Bebop coded. Which reminds me, David, you were watching that new show by the creators of Cowboy Bebop.
Lazarus, yes.
How is it?
I'm enjoying it.
It looked like the animation was really cool.
yeah, like it's smooth, it's nice.
And it definitely
it is the direct. Yeah. Oh god. First I'm like, is this actually just Yoko Kanno again doing the exact same thing, or is this someone who was clearly inspired by Cowboy Bebop doing the Yoko Kanno thing? I don't think I ever actually looked up the answer. Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. But I've kind of learned I try not to judge something until like the season's over. Like there are things that will just throw me out and I'm like, okay, I'm not willing to put more effort in. But if it's not like actively offending me, if I'm at least a little intrigued, I'm going to keep with it for a core.
I think Cowboy Bebop is actually a good segue into talking about JoJo, because Cowboy Bebop is an interesting one to look at in terms of it has very specific, very niche interests in it. And it kind of blew up because of that, and it's very singular. You say Cowboy Bebop, people know the aesthetic that you're talking about.
Well, it's the dub of Cowboy Bebop that made it so successful.
Interesting, right?
Because the original release in Japan, it kind of just went under the radar. And it kind of wasn't that popular. It was cheap to bring over for that reason. But the dub, they were basically given free reign.
A lot of the design aesthetic was referential to Western cinema, if I can say that without pissing people off.
A little bit of Western, a little bit of Western, a little bit of Hong Kong cinema, but like directors like
film noir, yeah,
but basically like directors like having delved more into like the heroic bloodshed genre of films, like definitely John Woo, but also directors like Johnny To is one of the directors that I feel is involved there, and let me pull up the name of the film.
The tone reminded me of a lot of 1940s movies I watched because I was way into film noir for a time.
Ringo Lam,
that would be right up your film study class.
Ringo Lam is the other director who's like probably is a big contributor, who's like a big influence. Like it's like Johnny To, definitely 100% John Woo. There's like some very transparent, not just a Better Tomorrow, but a Better Tomorrow 2 references in the film in the show. Also, I mean, you have a gunfight in a church with doves.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ringo Lam,
it's kind of iconic imagery, yeah.
And then Ringo Lam, who's the director of City on Fire, which also is one of the films that is credited for as being influential on Reservoir Dogs.
Can see that. Anyway, it's a show that has very specific loves that are built into it, and so is JoJo. You can see the creator's interests very plainly, you know.
Creator's kinks are just on display.
Or you could put it that way.
Well, that's more of a Reservoir Dogs Quentin Tarantino. You know exactly what Tarantino is into when every film's like, oh, okay.
Yep. Speaking of films which get across what the or works which get across very clearly what the creator is into at any given time, let's talk about the first half of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind. So
we're in Italy now, baby.
This season, like I love the new JoJo, Giorno Giovanna.
Gio.
Probably butchering that pronunciation. My Italian is awful. Oh, my Italian accent is awful.
I mean, that one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Giorno Giovanna. You just put emphasis on different syllables.
I like Giorno. It is art style is not helping, but his personality very much. He is a 15-year-old. This is like he thinks, and I actually really like this. He thinks a lot like a 15-year-old. He is very clever, and he thinks he knows more than he does, and he thinks he understands the world much better than he does. And I kind of love that about him. And Giorno and Bucciarati are like the only two people in this season that I actually like. Most of the other members of their team are kind of unlikable, to me at least. Like, I think they're interesting characters, but they're not all likable the way the Stardust Crusaders team was.
I see that.
Yeah, it's interesting to compare the main group to Josuke's squad or the Stardust Crusaders. But in any given group, there's characters that you like more and characters that you like less. I will say that Golden Wind is pretty fast paced. It's introducing like one antagonist every 2 episodes, or even every episode, or 2 antagonists every 2 episodes, and moving you through different stands very quickly. Everybody gets a flashback episode. Let's just say there was a lot crammed into this first part. And And it might be a little bit to the show's detriment. You don't get to see these people interact too much before they're all straight thrown into mortal stand fight danger.
I mean,
and I think the other difficulty is that all of them are so extra. And I know that's a weird thing to say about JoJo, where everyone is always super extra by design. But in this case, I feel like this particular Freak Squad, I say that with all the affection in the world, they're a little over designed in terms of every single one of them is so crazy distinct visually, has their own unique and tragic backstory that you're expected to know and remember. And then on top of that has their own very intense personality traits that arise from their past trauma. That it is a lot to handle all at once.
I think they don't feel like people. They feel like just a collection of individual tropes. And tropes by themselves are neither good nor bad. They are just storytelling elements we use. But there's nothing that the majority of the Bucciarati squad that makes them like distinct as people. They're just sort of a collection of their quirks.
Yeah.
You don't get my boy Bruno's backstory until like the very end of the first half. And
Bruno Bucciarati.
I feel like in his case, his character is written better than the others because we get time to sit with what we know about him before we discover why he is the way he is, right? It's almost like we don't need to know too much about him up to that point because he has a pretty strong establishing episode. And what you need to know about him basically is that he's in this gang, he's committed to it, but he is essentially a good person. And he recognizes that Giorno is a good person with good goals and decides to help him out. But then when you kind of learn the rest of his backstory, it's not, oh, this is why Bruno's the way he is. It's more, yeah, that makes sense. Because you already kind of know who he is at that point because it was shown to you, not told to you in flashback. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Particularly with like some of the characters, like we're getting the duos like Narancia and Panacotta, where Panacotta is basically a taller, handsome version of Joe Pesci from Goodfellas. In terms of the temper, like it's the kind of thing where like how to put this, Panacotta, like actually even a more hair trigger temper, like the way to put it is in Goodfellas, Joe Pesci's character, after the first mention of the shine box, manages to kind of keep his temper in check for a few minutes before he finally snaps and kills the guy. Panacotta would not have been as successful.
There's an explosive, abusive rage there. And we see in his backstory episode that he was raised with very domineering helicopter parents who wanted him to succeed. And he like went to college when he was super young.
And was abused by a law professor there.
And his rage flared up and he beat the guy to death with an encyclopedia.
It's not clear that he was beaten to death. He beat him to death with a law textbook.
And okay. That's fine, but that seems to me like it's only half the story. Like, so he gets disowned and thrown out after that, and he's living on the streets until Bucciarati finds him, right? But then the question becomes, like, what does Bucciarati see in him to get him to join the gang? Because Fugo in particular, I feel like his contributions are a little bit unclear. You look at the group as a whole. And I mean, you could kind of say that about all of them. Like, they were really pushing the found family angle with, like, these people were all let down by the system, and Bucciarati kind of rescued them. And, you know, now they're a found family. And it's like, well, Kind of, but that's not dramatized effectively. We get a little bit in Fugo's relationship with Narancia, where we see that he still cares about Narancia enough to try and tutor him, try and further his education, but then he snaps into that explosive rage when Narancia messes up.
But that's their introductory scene.
And that's their introductory scene. Yeah, so it's like, okay, this guy's abusive.
Like, the thing is that Narancia is dumber than a pile of rocks, and that Fugo will fucking snap at the slightest thing
and deal physical injury. And it's like, that doesn't endear me to a character, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's how we're introduced to you. It's like, at that point, I'm not really that interested in what your reasoning behind it is. You've kind of proven that
you lost me there.
Yeah. I get the impression, like, they're thinking here in terms like, okay, again, Araki wears his genre influences on his sleeve. I'm like, what is he doing here? Because it's not like, certainly Scorsese gangster flicks as part of it. Then I thought, wait, no, because I'm also familiar with like various degrees of Italian exploitation film, like Giallo and that sort of thing. And part of that is there's like a Italian basically version of the mobster film, which oftentimes like takes the American interpretation of gangster movies and then amps them up to fit with how Italian audiences from the 70s and 80s to watch 60s, 70s, and 80s watched films. I recommend for listening to this, listening to the audio film historian audio commentary for Fistful of Dollars, where they talk about this. Basically, the way that Italian film audiences through the 60s and 70s, and to a certain degree even into the 80s, watched movies is movie theaters were as much a space for socialization as anything else. So you'd have audiences who would go to the theater, there would be the movie on, and they'd be just as much smoking and drinking and that sort of thing. And in some cases, you'd even have the projectionists who would just flake off and go hit on the gal working at concessions in the lobby or what have you. And so the way that you kept the audience paying attention to the film, you kept the projectionist in the projectionist booth to change the reels when they were needed to, was you amped up the sex and violence. And that is how you get some of like the very like the more violent ends of like your just Franco's more Spanish, but he did a lot of Italian films. Roberto Lenzi, that sort of thing. And that applied to the gangster genre as well, where they amped up where they would amped up the personality traits dramatically from, say, what you'd have for a Joe Pesci character in an American film, or with or various characters from The Godfather or other Scorsese movies. And that
The Godfather was Coppola.
Yeah, Godfather's Coppola, but also you had Coppola doing The Godfather, you had Scorsese doing Mean Streets around the same time.
That's true.
And kind of taking cues from both in terms of big scope. Coppola boiled down to the gutter level with Scorsese and that side of things. And so like
I think there's a couple of things going on here that make it harder to identify with the characters. Because when you put such extremes of personality traits and action beats into a show that's already as heightened reality as JoJo, what gets lost? Well, the slower beats get lost, characterization gets lost. And even in this case, I would say that the sense of groundedness that is so good in JoJo gets lost. Because if you compare it to last season when we had Morio, you can tell that the author mapped out the entire town. There was an amazing sense of where everything was. And so the town itself was your constant throughout everything. And we never get that with Naples. Even though the first part of the season starts in Naples, they quickly go off and start hitting other places in Italy. So it becomes more of like a tourist trip almost. So the sense of place doesn't anchor you, except for the broader sense that it's Italian.
Yeah. I think also is like the genre shift does not help here either. because ultimately sees like Stardust Crusaders and uh name of last season literally just dropped out of my head.
Diamond is Unbreakable.
Diamond is Unbreakable kept a sense of horror as their focus to them. That you had you were doing, I guess you were doing a road trip for the Stardust Crusaders, but there's still the sense that you are being you are hunting and being hunted. And so the horror came in from that.
Yeah, and in Stardust Crusaders, they had moments where they got to a place and they were like, okay, we know we'll never be completely safe, but we can take a beat here to kind of relax.
And also, like, part of the thing with horror is it is vitally important that you have some degree of emotional rapport to your main cast. That does not come up as much with gangster films. And I think while there's aspects of horror to Golden Wind, because we're steeping this in the trappings of gangster films, and even in gangster films they're trying to show how glamorous and how damn it feels good to be a gangster. There's still this sense of emotional and psychological distance that comes from the trappings of the gangster film in this way, because there's always a sense of like, yeah, it's cool to be a gangster, but you have to give up some of not necessarily your humanity, but your empathy and to survive in this field in this world.
Yeah. There's a lot of reaching for an emotional through line in terms of these people were all failed by the system, and they think that the only way to fix it is through taking over this organization, right? But it never really becomes dramatized. I would say that it gets the closest with Bucciarati, because we see from his first couple episodes that he hates drugs being run on his streets. And then, like I said, you don't learn until his backstory episode way later why he is against the practice so much. But even then, it doesn't quite, like, you're not really emphasizing. You're just like, okay, I get that. Like, I understand where you're coming from. But you've moved so far from the point of, I need to protect my people in my neighborhood, to stand battles and action, that it doesn't work as an emotional grounding. And then the show kind of tries to shift to the emotional grounding being, we're doing this together, like our gang is the reason. But that doesn't quite work either, because they're not, like, they don't feel like a family. And part of that is the pacing. Like, Giorno joins them and they're immediately off, right? But I feel like there were ways to have dramatized that, or given them more of a group context, that would have made us care about them as a group more.
Also, one thing I noticed is the use of, like, each individual's stands. Like, previously, stands were always representative of the person in some way or another. And that's true with some of the people. But some of them also, it's just like really surface level, and it's not like giving us anything. Like Giorno's stand, Golden Wind. Or no, it's
Gold Experience original.
Yeah, Gold Experience. It's not telling me any, like, he can take things and bring them to life. Okay, that's cool. That is an awesome power. But it doesn't tell me much about Giorno.
Except for the very obvious surface level life versus death dichotomy.
Like, and Bucciarati's Sticky Fingers, or Zipper Man. He can literally put things in other things. There is more inside. He can hide things away. That's just very surface level. Fugo's stand, it just wildly is lashing out, and that's just his character already.
Yeah, they say that it kind of represents his unchecked rage, and it's like, well, okay.
But the thing is, we've already seen his unchecked rage. When Naranja got a meth problem wrong, and he stabbed him.
Yeah.
It's like the stand isn't the stands aren't teaching us anything new about the characters.
Agreed. And I thought about this.
Especially White Album, which is totally different from any other stand thus far in that it's just a suit of armor for the guy. Like, it does other things, but essentially, yeah, it's like, okay, this literally, I know nothing about your character because this is not even representing anything we've seen of you. This is just a cool power.
Yeah.
That's the same problem again with dramatization, where it gives you the reason why the execution squad is trying to kill the boss. It shows the backstory of two of their members being brutally killed by the boss.
One brutally killed and the other choking to death on his own gag so that he wouldn't die that same way.
Right. And, they see the Hannibal-esque message that the boss sends them where he carves this guy up and sends it to them as like an art installation. And okay, that I thought that was very, very gangster movie.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, it was okay. I get why these people are doing what they're doing, but I don't feel it. I don't feel their side of the story. Like, I'm not rooting for them in any sense. Even though they have just as good a reason to go after the boss as Giorno and crew do.
Absolutely.
I mean, arguably better. Revenge is a much better gangster movie motivation for the crew.
Yeah, I feel like you could have made a really compelling story just about Risotto. And I understand that his episodes haven't quite come up yet in the first half, but we'll get to him eventually. But yeah, it's like maybe you guys should be the hero of this story. But no, I don't feel it.
I think what probably hurts this in terms of looking at the timeline of gangster media and mafia media and in popular culture and how that spreads worldwide and that sort of thing. Because I was curious and I went and I looked up when The Sopranos started airing compared to when this when this arc of the manga started. This arc of the manga started in 1995. Sopranos didn't start till 1999, and I think that's significant because Sopranos is a case of most gangster media about a mob crew at this point tended to be not short films, but tended to be films, often with them either being as the antagonist or becoming an antagonistic force over the course of the film. Again, Goodfellas. Or if they were a television series, they were just strictly the antagonist there as well. Something like the TV series Wise Guy, which was a Michael Mann joint. And by comparison, Sopranos, because it was a series that was being focused on the interiority of these of not just the mob crew, but also mob crew and their interiority through going through the psych therapy. They had to put the work into here's how you write a mafia crew or a gangster crew, and as a found family sort of setup, even if they have their families outside of the mafia, their crew, and give them this chemistry while also them being very scary people who have no problems using violence to reach their ends. Again, violence against innocent people even to achieve their ends. And I don't know, and I've seen some stuff to that effect in terms of media coming out of Japan with Yakuza films and some Hong Kong films. But again, that's films. That's not trying to do this over a long form story. So I definitely feel like it really doesn't help that from the standpoint of this genre, in a weird way, Araki is going off the map.
I think it's that he's trying to have it both ways, right? He wants that veneer of super cool action, violence, cool gangster guy, but he also wants you to think, oh, the main character is a hero and I'm rooting for the hero as they're doing heroic things. And those two concepts logically fight each other, And so you have all of that reaching with each character's backstory to try and say, no, the system is broken. They're operating outside the law for the greater good. And it doesn't. Again, there's that cognitive dissonance of like, I can understand all day that these characters are victims of a messed up system and they never got the help that they're looking for, except in the form of Bucciarati, basically. But that doesn't really make me want to root for them,
Absolutely. I mean, that is part of, like, again, I spent like a big chunk of like my middle school and high school just reading tons of gangster stuff, because partly because that's also when I got into cyberpunk and cyberpunk role-playing games like Shadowrun, and those really mesh with each other very heavily.
Yeah.
And so like getting into like, okay, what is the thing that leads people into wanting to do organized crime? And often it's it is being failed by the system, being in an environment where they are fundamentally outside the system, whether because they're a discriminated against minority population or what have you, and or lack of opportunity, meaning that the only opportunity for anything is through crime. And so, like, on the one hand, Araki nailed it, got that part correct. Everyone like found ways to have that fit for everybody, for how that led to them into Passione and Bucciarati's group in particular. But yeah, like, of the main characters, and I was thinking about this, Bucciarati's the only one who like fits the archetype of the heroic, of the heroic mafia film protagonist. Bucciarati's probably the closest one to actually being to fitting that heroic archetype.
Yep.
He's much more of the Pacino as Michael Corleone kind of setup, or even for that matter, Pacino as Michael Corleone setup, where like I'm thrust into the position of taking a degree of leadership in trying to shape how the mafia is going to be based on my personal ethics, while still being like, hey, I'm doing crime. Whereas everyone else kind of is just, as you've said, they're a personality trait.
The show takes time to dramatize Bucciarati right in the beginning, when he takes Giorno to the local ristorante and he's approached by the old women in the neighborhood, and they're like, oh, we have these problems. And he says, I'll take care of it. You can tell that he is connected to and protective of the people under him. So the show actually does take a beat to dramatize that right from the beginning. And that's part of what makes Bucciarati such a stronger character than the other members of the gang.
But also that was episode 2.
Yeah.
That's like before we meet anyone else. That's before the show.
Because then he kind of comes into their stories as already this fully formed character in your mind that we know will try and take care of people.
Yeah, it's like this is early on, and they kind of abandoned that character building as soon as we meet the others.
This is true. David and I were kind of pointing out, like, okay, as soon as Bucciarati becomes capo of Naples, he's also given the mission to protect Trish. So the team is immediately leaving Naples, and I would have liked to see a couple scenes, or even just one scene, of Bucciarati sending orders back to people in Naples, to show that he's still doing his job. And
he's a capo.
Taking care of the people in his neighborhoods.
He's capo of an entire city. He has more than just the 5 guys working for him.
It would have just taken like 10 seconds of him with a laptop saying, okay, I'm sending out orders. But no, we don't get that. Instead, the show is just 100% locked in to, we're on the mission from the boss, and we're immediately attacked, and we're doing like, there is some very cool spy movie stuff with the way the boss communicates, and the leaving of messages and the exploitation of their stand abilities to access those messages, particularly, Moody Jazz.
Unless the boss's stand gives him the ability to see the future, there is no way any of that actually works. Like, I understand this is JoJo, but God, damn, it was stretching that suspension of disbelief to the breaking point.
Yeah. But particularly with the introduction of the turtle stand, which
I thought that was
I kind of loved the turtle, and it's like, I love the turtle. I love this idea. Why is it tied to this one key that the boss was somehow able to write a message on and leave for them ahead of time, embedded in a statue that had been there for ages? Like, okay, maybe he replaced the statue with a fake one he just put out, but concrete takes a long ass time to dry.
At this point, we don't know how the boss got a hold of the arrow, or possibly more than one arrows. But I could totally see them experimenting with it. Like, let's try it on an animal first.
That's
like,
fair.
I've seen animal stand users before.
Yes.
That's true. I do.
And the drama of them hiding in the turtle while those two guys are searching the train, I thought was well executed.
Yep. But yeah, I definitely see like the whole history of animal stands basically being like, at least the ones that have received the power from the arrow, either by Dio or by somebody else, be like, okay, I have no idea how this works. They test things on animals, right? Okay.
My biggest question is, okay, you have to be hit by the arrow in order to get a stand. But does it have to be like a lethal shot? Is that like why the turtle shell is completely cracked? Or can it be like a cut? Because it's like, no, we know it can just be a cut because of some people from Diamond is Unbreakable.
The arrow lore is a bit as the plot requires.
Yeah.
I think there's a few things in this season that are they go so for the vibes that the logic kind of threw me for a loop. Particularly, I would say the Grateful Dead was the worst offender in this regard, in terms of who its power affected and how and when and how much. Like, that was just like completely up in the air at any given moment. Like, they try and establish some rules very early on for how the power works and how it's targeting people by body temperature. But then they kind of throw all that out, like the second half of the episode and the next episode.
It's like, okay, I'm still aging. I'm like, you're on top of a train going at 150 miles an hour. You are freezing right now. There is no way your body is overheating.
I've got lines on my face. Now I'm back to normal. I've got more lines on my face, but now I'm back to normal.
I'm sucking on ice cubes in order to keep myself cool. I'm like, okay, that's great. But you are also heavily overweight, my friend. You are boiling right now. That is just the way physics works.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sorry, that is not. It's like,
Everything about that.
Because when it's like, cooler, I'm like, that's the reason you're going with the kid who's drinking an ice drink, not literally because she's the smallest among you all. I think that would have been much more interesting if it had been Narancha who had had to be like the smart one in the situation.
It would have been screwed.
I know, but here's the thing. His stand would have been perfect for that. The fucking toy bomber.
That's why they couldn't.
Fighter. It's like, this is the perfect time to use that. Like, combine the bomber with the turtle stand. You essentially have a little fortress, but also you can,
I mean, I definitely have mixed feelings about the train episodes. Like, on the one hand, a lot of it was really well executed, like in that it was tense and exciting, and I love the bullet boys. Like, I don't know what else to say about that. I love the little bullet guys.
Sex Pistols.
Yeah. I just called them the bullet bros. And I really loved Pesci's sudden turn into, no, my bro! I have to be badass now because bro would want me to. I don't know why I love that so much, but I did. I love Bucciarati throwing himself off the train with the bad guy. Although I don't know why he didn't just unzip the train from underneath that guy in the first place. I don't know why he had to throw himself out of it.
It was really well done, but incredibly poorly thought.
Yeah, there were so many logical moments. I was like, wait, all right.
Until it was like, wait, I can unzip this part of the train. I'm like, you could have done that the entire time.
Bucciarati underutilizes his power a lot. A lot.
Okay, here's the thing. No one underutilizes their power in this season as much as Giorno, because the ability to take inanimate objects and turn them into living animals that obey him and that he can program them to do things is so much more powerful.
It's so OP. I think it's kind of the point.
Like, it's like, okay, you're dealing with these two angry guys. Great. Turn that chair into a lion and have it maul them. Oh, it's going to age them? It's a chair. I think it can last a little.
Actually, yeah, this is a good point. Like, what's the biggest thing we've seen him transmute? It was like he made a tree once, right? And like when he was facing
huge tree. It's like,
so does he not have a size limitation?
It does. I mean, he probably has a size limitation, but it seems to be absurd.
An absurd limitation. Fair. Yeah. I like the detail that his brooches or buttons, I think the dub called them buttons, and I was like, those are buttons? I like the detail that his ladybug brooches are just things that he uses to transmute, because of course he would keep stuff on you for that. I like the
problem is he makes them so obvious so that when he loses one, it's really obvious. It's like,
yeah.
Okay, JoJo, what did you just do? I didn't do anything. One of your best ladybug eggs is gone.
Also, can we just point out briefly how many times people lost hands in these episodes? I think everybody lost at least one hand and then had it put right back on.
Yeah, it's definitely minimizing some of the consequences of some of the body horror stuff from previous seasons.
Yeah, nothing sticks.
Like, also the question is
Mista is shot how many times?
Oh my god.
So many times.
Mista should be dead like 12 times over in this first half of the season alone.
Speaking of little quirks and stuff, one thing I really did like is because Giorno is the son of Dio Brando, he has a different catchphrase from the other JoJo's when he's beating the crap out of somebody. He busts out the muda 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 instead.
Yeah, he does.
Like, he is the son of Dio Brando by way of Jonathan Joestar's body.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why he's a JoJo.
Yeah. But
and they do take pains to establish that. I mean, because like the first thing he does is steal from Koichi, and then Koichi tracks him down, and then they have the whole face off with what was it, Black Sabbath, and then Koichi's kind of like, "All right, I see it now. You are definitely one of these guys." Like,
Koichi would have been so useful to keep around.
That's why he couldn't stay.
I know.
I don't think Koichi would do crime, even for a good reason.
He would have been so useful. But his appearance doesn't add anything aside from his ability to have a conversation with Jotaro about how this guy is Dio's son.
Jotaro did seem kind of shoehorned in at the beginning there, but
the only reason is just to establish how Giorno is related to the rest of this nonsense.
Yeah,
which, to be fair, is worth knowing. Like,
it's worth knowing, but it could have easily been a picture of his mom with Dio and just let the audience go, oh, okay.
Right, but the thing is, like, you're kind of like, okay, so he's one of them, that's why he has a stand. But then the other stands show up, and you're like, where did this come from? And it has the arrow, and you're like, oh, crap. You know, I kind of get where that's coming from narratively.
Also, what was how did we saw Pulpo's stand, we know what it can do. How is he able to turn his body into a bed?
Yeah, I don't know that. That has no answer.
It's not like, oh, he's disguising himself as a beanbag. It was a bed. It had.
So can we talk about how in, like, I don't know what this was, the third or fourth episode, Giorno straight up executes Pulpo?
Oh yeah, like this is of the JoJo series. All the other ones, like, Stand Welder defeated. Stand Welder retires from the competition. Like the most that a JoJo so far has actually killed somebody, as far as other Stand Welders.
Hi, Angela.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Was like in Diamond is Unbreakable when that JoJo basically decides, oh, So my stand power lets me basically pull some the Spectre level poetic torment crap, poetic punishment. I'm gonna do that. But this is like, no, we're in the mafia.
They really, really hammered in that guy deserved it.
Yeah. Whereas in Golden Wind, like, we're in a mob genre now. People get murked all the time. So people are going to get murked all the time.
No big deal. Yeah, people will lose hands and stuff. I have more I want to say about that, but it's gonna have to wait for next time because, like, I don't think we've gotten there yet in terms of the episodes. Like, we got to talk about the permanence/impermanence of wounding and death a little more next time.
Yeah.
And as always, as this is a JoJo, if you have tryptophobia, do not go anywhere near.
Oh yeah, it's big time.
And also, this is a Miura series. This is a JoJo series. Bad things happen to animals, so if you be advised if that's a problem for you.
Turtle's fine so far.
The turtle, but dogs, cats, bugs.
Sorry, I like the turtle.
Is pure than intelligence Naranja?
So the last episode that we were supposed to watch this time was the one where Bucciarati and Triss go into the church, right?
Yeah, episode 19.
And Bucciarati realizes, after yet another hand is severed, that his assumptions about what they were doing this whole time were wrong.
Oh, we have not gotten the reveal of what the orders are yet. He hasn't gone in the church yet. So
did we watch an extra? I know we watched an extra episode. Did we watch an extra 2?
We might have.
Yeah,
I just like it.
Yes. So we ended with White Album and being defeated, and Gakio being defeated, and the ending of the episode was Giorno healing Mista's injuries on a park bench with other characters looking, that looks kind of lewd, followed by going straight into our closing credits song.
I appreciate that they had Giorno say a line like, I can't like heal you, but I can like replace some of this stuff and it's gonna feel weird. Like
also that's the question. Like, we know all stand users have a range limit. If Giorno walks 30 feet away, is that all going back to the rubble it was before?
And it was also unclear after Giorno fought Babyface if the pieces of himself that he made out of random objects stayed with him or if he picked up his original pieces and put them back.
That's actually something I wanted to bring up about Babyface. Is Babyface breaks one huge rule about the stands, is that only stand users can see stands. And Babyface's user shows his stand to a woman and she reacts to it.
Well,
because we see his stand is the laptop. It grows arms and legs. It is a thing. It creates minions. That is his stand, and he showed it to someone who was not a stand user.
I mean, we don't know for 100% certain that that's what she was reacting to, because she had every reason to be freaked out at that point.
No, but he showed her the list. He was like, okay, which of these?
But again, we don't know that she saw it.
But he
know
didn't...
that he was acting like she could.
Yes, we're
whatever. It's weird.
Yeah. We're knowing that the show showed us that she was reacting to what he was showing her.
I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt, but this is one of those things where it's just kind of like, okay, everything about that stand raises questions, but I really don't want to have to think about them.
That's fair.
Yeah. So,
this is interesting, not in the fun.
Not in the fun, but yes.
So, again, wrapping up this episode, favorite stand battles of the first half.
I mean, like I said, there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about the train sequence when they were hiding.
I really liked Bucciarati against Fisherman and Grateful Dead. But that's just because Bucciarati essentially terminatoring his way through it. I don't think the actual conflict between the stands was that interesting.
It was more figuring out how to circumvent the Grateful Dead's power long enough to deal with the user, which is also kind of an interesting approach. I like that. I liked how Bucciarati literally like dismembered himself to try and survive, and then the train like has the parts roll away from him, and he's like, "Well, that's it. I'm dead." And if luck hadn't happened and rolled them back, then yeah, he would have been dead. Like, it's just one of those moments like, I did all I could and fate is against me for these 5 seconds. Like,
but that's honestly kind of what I found was really annoying, is because previously we have seen, no matter how Bucciarati like takes you apart, like the parts are still connected across that like purple haze. So why is he dying all of a sudden? Like they're still connected. We see he has control of the hand even when he zippered it off. So there's still like some connection between them, but suddenly there isn't. So it's very inconsistent.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Brilliantly done, poorly thought out.
Speaking of things with purple haze, the Man in the Mirror purple haze fight in Pompeii, that I think in terms of ones which involve interesting executions of the stand power concepts and how they butt up against each other, that whole fight, I think,
you have to invite in. That was a good concept.
Everyone follows vampire rules for my stand. Vampires. How is Giorno surviving?
Yeah, Giorno's solution to being infected with the purple haze virus would not have worked. You have to take a vaccine before you get the disease in question to train your immune system how to deal with it. You can't take it after the fact.
That's called a cure.
Is that a translation issue?
I think this is a case of people confusing the concepts of a vaccine and an anti-serum.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if that mistake was present in the original or if it was a translation issue, but I was like, no, that's not how that works.
I mean, that's a common thing, I will say. I have encountered, like, if I had $1 for every time I've encountered a work of fiction where people have mixed up vaccine and anti-serum, I wouldn't have student loans.
I feel like everyone should know how vaccines work so that they understand why they work and why it's important to get vaccinated. Sorry, that's a trigger for me.
Yeah, like, I don't know that.
But whatever.
Yeah.
I think it does come up later that Giorno is immune to purple haze now, this is a cool detail to have come up later.
Okay.
Will it come up later?
Okay, it might not come up in the show, but there is like a side novel about Fugo specifically that I read a synopsis of. But I won't go into it because it happens in the second half.
Okay, that's interesting. But I've got to say, as I say all the time, if you don't put it in your show, I can't give you credit for it.
Yeah, if it does come up, it'll be cool. But if it doesn't, oops.
Oh, wow.
It's like, I don't care if you did extra work. If it's not in the assignment, you're not getting credit for it.
Yeah.
I think Moody Blues or Moody Jazz's power is super cool.
Yeah, I like Moody Blues. I as a fan of the band Moody Blues, I will stick with the original name.
Moody Blues.
Like I do like that power as a lot as well, both in terms of how they find ways to incorporate it into fights in an interesting way, but also getting into the investigative side of things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That would be so interesting if he wasn't a beat cop. Like, if he was actually a detective. This is one of those things where that would actually be a really interesting way of examining his character. But it's not. It's just...
Yeah, he doesn't really get enough time to
He
to
was
make it interesting.
He was a beat cop. It's like, oh, what? Why? Okay.
Again, in terms of stands, I love Sex Pistols. I love the Bullet Boys, and anytime they show up is a treat for me. I love how there's no number 4 because he's superstitious about the number 4.
But that's a Japanese superstition.
Even though it's an Italian, and it makes no sense.
Italian one.
I know, but and I love how the Bullet Boys have little personalities. Like one of them's always being picked on, and one of them is obviously a bully, and
It's a coward.
and they're hungry. I don't know why they have to be fed real food. That's not how stands should work. But you know what? Whatever. I don't get it. I love how Mista drops bullets out of his hat into his gun.
A seemingly infinite supply of bullets.
Seemingly infinite supply of bullets.
I'm wondering if he just does not have a head under there. It's just a bullet. I mean, given the number of times he has let himself be shot in the head, maybe it is just a bullet supply.
And I actually like his outfit the best in terms of fashion. I feel like he's the most cohesively fashionable. Yeah.
Yeah, like he has a much more cohesive style to him, like with the diamonds and cross hatching and that sort of thing, leading into the sort of leopard print pattern on the pants or leopard.
Speaking of style, someone showed up to the Met Gala in a Giorno inspired jacket.
They did. It was so cool.
The full heart window.
Full heart window.
Who was it? Because
let me look.
Because I know Little Nas X is a kind of a semi-secret anime fan.
It was a model named Alton Mason.
Huh.
And yeah, he was name checking JoJo on the runway.
Oh yeah, that is
a good homage.
Yeah, that is straight up the
That's Giorno's jacket.
That's Giorno's jacket.
Minus the ladybugs.
Yeah. He's working it too. He looks fabulous.
Yeah, in fact, he explicitly stated there was a JoJo reference in an interview with Teen Vogue.
Yep.
I mean, that not too surprising. There, like, lots of also fashion designers have been very influenced by JoJo. There's there was the JoJo Versace collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yeah. But I will other than that, as far as like the how the drip game goes, Mista's the best of Bucciarati's crew, I would say.
I hate Fugo's outfit so much.
I also hate Fugo.
Yeah,
not just because it's an incredibly ugly green, but the fact that he's wearing a tie without a shirt under a jacket that is open up to his sternum
also,
on the leading up.
I read this canonically according to the sensei. He's wearing a thong under that.
I mean, you kind of have to
care at that point.
I mean,
it's the holes that get me.
Yeah, it's the holes. Like, for me, the problem I have with the outfit is the holes.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Too many. They're not even like strategically designed. They're just everywhere.
And then looking at the execution squad,
Execution squad is mostly kind of boring, except for Pesci, who is a pineapple.
Yeah. Pesci is just a pineapple in a trench coat and kind of a leotard outfit. Everyone else is kind of basic suits. Prosciutto's suits actually is pretty good.
Prosciutto doesn't look bad. Yeah, Prosciutto looks all right. I think Risotto looks all right in kind of a goth way.
Risotto is interesting, but he, aside from being in the background, we haven't really seen his character, so we can't really talk about it yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I suppose we can talk about his design. It's interesting, and somehow he has black sclera.
I kind of like Trish's fit, but I think the show even lampshades this. Like, that top is not staying up, honey.
Yeah. Every time she walks, one breast is popping out. There's
just no way around it. Except a lot of tape.
All
At that
right.
point, you're just wearing the tape, though.
I mean, I kind of get it. It's hot in Italy, but it ain't comfy. I'll tell you that.
It is hot, but he also was living on an island, and those get cold with the
It ain't
breezes.
comfy, I tell you, man.
I do like the math operator thing on the dress. The math.
She looks like Miss Frizzle with that dress. That is what that it is.
See it? Very fashionable Miss Frizzle. Love that.
Turns out Miss Frizzle is a stand welder, and her stand is Magic School Bus.
Oh. Actually, that would make perfect sense. That show, put it in JoJo's universe, it would work, baby. Like,
doesn't make any sense.
It's perfect. Sorry, that's like my new headcanon now. I'm delighted with that. Times.
All right. So, final thoughts on the first half of Golden Wind.
Great vibes, poorly thought out.
There's just that underlying cognitive dissonance makes it really hard to latch onto the characters like you did with previous JoJo teams. And yeah, I mean, that's what it really comes down to for me. I have a blast watching it anyway, but it's never gonna outdo Diamond is Unbreakable in my heart, or even Stardust Crusaders.
All right.
I think Diamond is Unbreakable is just like, it's unshakable for me. It's like,
yeah, like
I mean, I love Diamond is Unbreakable, but you can't beat old Joseph from Stardust Crusaders.
I have such love for old Joseph. Joseph
is in Diamond is Unbreakable, but he's not old Joseph outside of like one episode.
He's Grampy Joseph.
Yeah, like I definitely agree that like this has a tough mark to beat after the last couple seasons. And it's not quite there, at least for this first half.
One thing we do have to keep in mind, though, is that for this first half, the antagonist has not really coalesced.
I mean, they have had an antagonist. It's the Execution Squad.
Right.
But it's not a single
That's
individual.
not a big bad like Kira or Dio.
Ours. Dio.
Back to Dio.
Yeah. So next,
Kira was such a good villain, Dane.
Next month
Kira was a great.
Yes, he was in all of his appearances. Next month we'll be covering the back half of Golden Wind. That is episodes 20 through episode 39.
And I will say really quick, for anyone who kind of watched this far and is like, I don't know, give it a little longer. Because I do think the back half's the better half.
I mean, much like Stardust Crusaders, the first half was the journey there, and the second half is going to be the resolution.
It's really about the pop off.
It's just Stardust Crusaders made the journey fun.
Yeah.
But also endless.
This is true. Stardust Crusaders is longer than Golden Wind.
Sensei's sitting there like, wait, how many major arcana are there? Crap, that's like so many more than I thought.
Okay, this one's going to be an ally, so I don't have to deal with it, and it's going to be a dog. Okay. You need another design. I don't have another. Okay, this one's an evil bird, is what this one is.
Maybe it was the other way. He had trouble narrowing it down, and they were like, no, just the tarot people and the Egyptian god people, stop there. And he's like, but I have like 20 more. And they're like, no.
Make a sequel. Okay.
I could see it, honestly.
Fine, but this one's gonna be with Joseph's son. Joseph has a daughter, but he's gonna now have a son in the 90s.
This guy's creativity and consistency are incredible.
Yeah.
He deserves his laurels for that.
I mean, like this is definitely my least favorite JoJo thus far, but it's still been a fun experience.
Yeah, like thus far, like the worst of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure so far is still not bad. It's still
Yeah.
It's not bad at all.
it, this isn't like where the worst, like I love Toriyama, but some of the worst of Dragon Ball is actually boring. And
What?
I'm
A new tournament? No. Hello. Oh, thank God. The tournament is only 42 minutes. That is, oh, I'm so happy. How is it 50 episodes? That is more than one episode per minute.
like, or for that matter, like I ended up like putting Yu Yu Hakusho on hold once we went to yet more tournament. And
more tournament.
Oh my God, I love Yu Yu Hakusho, but the Dark Tournament should not be that long.
Honestly, this should be a trope if it isn't already. Yet more tournament. Like it just
That
goes
is
on
one
forever.
reason that is one reason I dropped Hunter x Hunter. Was because it was nothing but consecutive tournament arcs. There is no character growth as far as personality. They could just get stronger and find new tournaments to fight in.
Actually, this is a huge point in JoJo's favor. The fact that it keeps things moving and each stand is a different method of solving it or dealing with the problem it presents. So it keeps things fresh and lively.
And it keeps coming up with ways for people to fight that isn't just a tournament.
Yeah. Sometimes you're fighting, sometimes you're hiding, sometimes you're solving a puzzle, sometimes you're doing detective work. Yeah, it's great. It's a big part, I think, of why it's so successful.
And
it's always fun.
Indeed.
And it's always fun.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to the back half of Golden Wind next month. And in the meantime, if you have any thoughts to share about what we've covered so far, or the back half, please send us an email to animeexplorationspod, that's with 2 E's, at gmail.com. If we get emails, I'll read them on the air. We haven't gotten any emails yet, so you could be the first. So that also please rate and review the podcast on your podcatching platform of choice, whether that's Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. It helps people discover the show and gets us new viewers. Also, like comments on YouTube and similar platforms, once again, helps get our visibility for the YouTube versions of the episodes. And finally, if you just want to toss us some money to help cover hosting costs and all that wonderful stuff, please consider backing the Patreon at patreon.com/count0or. That gets you episodes of the podcast and everything else I do, Let's Plays, blog posts, video essays, all that sort of stuff up to 1 week in advance. And I also have a Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/count0 if doing the whole Patreon monthly subscription thing doesn't work with your budget. Minor little bit of housekeeping. I didn't really get into this much on the YouTube channel or elsewhere, but Patreon had been doing a thing where if you would subscribe through iTunes, through iOS devices, that Apple is going to take a 30% cut. That's not happening anymore. So yay.
That was some nonsense.
Yep. But yeah, so until next month, thank you all very much for listening, and we'll be back to conclude our little Mediterranean vacation.
Heck yeah. See you next time, guys.
Bye.